Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I've got to start right off the bat with a little confession. For 6 whole months, I did absolutely everything right. I mean, I watered it, I gave it light, I even talked to it. Yes, I was actually that person. But despite all my efforts to focus on this plant and give it literally the best life possible, every single week another leaf turned yellow, another stem went soft, the soil even started to smell kind of strange, and I had absolutely no idea why. I was this close to just throwing the whole thing away. I genuinely thought I just had a black thumb and terrible luck. You know that feeling, right? You start to think you're just one of those people who simply cannot keep things alive no matter what. But instead of tossing it in the compost bin, I decided to dig deeper, literally and figuratively. I wanted to find the real hidden reasons why my plant was struggling. And what I found, it completely changed how I care for every single plant in my home. Today, we're going to take that exact journey together. Because if your plant is struggling right now, the real reason is likely one of the 5 hidden culprits I'm about to show you. The frustration is so real when you are trying your absolute best. And to make this whole situation even more embarrassing, my dying plant was a pothos. If you know anything about houseplants, you know the pothos is jokingly known as being unkillable. People literally say you have to actively try to kill one. I wasn't trying, but there it was, yellowing from the bottom up. Naturally, I went straight to the internet for answers, and the advice was everywhere. Oh, you're probably overwatering. So I stopped watering. The plant got worse. Then the internet said, well, you're probably underwatering now. So I watered again, and the plant just kept declining. The problem, as it turned out, was never the watering. It was something I completely couldn't see.
Okay, let's dive into this. Culprit number 1, the drainage disaster.
So the very first thing I did in my little investigation was take the plant out of its beautiful pot. And what I found literally stopped me in my tracks. The bottom third of the soil was soaking wet, basically muddy. But the top layer, it looked totally dry. And the roots sitting in that wet bottom layer had turned completely brown and soft. Why? Because the pot I had chosen, this gorgeous glazed ceramic pot with a sealed base, had 0 drainage holes. That sealed base had been slowly creating this invisible pool of stagnant water at the bottom every single time I watered. But here's the fascinating science behind it. Water doesn't easily evaporate from fine soil in a sealed container. It just sits there. And sitting water removes all the oxygen from the soil. So your roots don't actually drown from the water directly, they suffocate from the lack of oxygen. The water just fills up the tiny air pockets in the soil that the roots rely on to breathe. And without oxygen, those roots shut down and the rot sets in. The fix here is super straightforward. Every single pot your plant lives in must have at least 1 drainage hole. It is non-negotiable. Now, if you absolutely love a decorative pot that doesn't have a hole, that's fine. Just use it as a cover pot. Keep your plant in a plain plastic nursery pot that has drainage and just place that inside the decorative one. When it's time to water, lift the inner pot out, water it, let it drain completely in the sink, and then pop it back in. Oh, and if you use a saucer, never let your plant sit in a puddle for more than 30 minutes. Empty it out. Honestly, this one single change prevents the vast majority of root rot cases. Moving right along. Culprit number 2, the light illusion. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive gap between what we see and what the plant actually experiences. See, once I fixed the drainage, I expected this instant miracle. But instead, the new growth kept coming in super pale, almost translucent, and there were these incredibly long, awkward gaps between each leaf on the stem. My plant was sitting near a window, and the room felt beautifully bright to me. I had absolutely no idea light was the issue. That is, until I downloaded a light meter app on my phone and pointed it right where my plant was sitting. It read 200 lux. To put that into perspective for you, a bright, sunny outdoor garden is 50,000 lux or more. Our human eyes are incredibly good at adjusting to low light. We walk into a room and everything looks perfectly bright. But plants, they can't adjust. They only receive the light photons that physically hit their leaves. So what felt like a bright room to me was essentially a dim cave to my plant. When a plant doesn't get enough light, it goes straight into survival mode. It physically stretches its stems between each leaf trying to reach toward a brighter spot. This process is actually called etiolation, and as a result, the new leaves come in much smaller and the plant's overall growth just grinds to a halt. Because it literally can't photosynthesize enough energy to maintain all its existing foliage, the older leaves start to turn yellow and drop off. So how do we fix this light illusion? Simple. Move the plant closer to the window, like much closer than feels necessary to your human eyes. Most indoor plants thrive best within 1 to 2 meters of a window. But hey, if your home just doesn't get bright natural light, invest in a dedicated full-spectrum LED grow light. Don't use standard household bulbs. They just don't have the right spectrum for plants. Put that LED light on a simple timer for 12 to 14 hours a day. Within 2 to 3 weeks, I promise you'll see new growth coming in fuller, darker, and way more compact.
Next up, culprit number 3, the soil trap. All right, so even with better light and drainage, my plant's recovery was still painfully slow. And I noticed another really weird symptom. When I watered it, the water just ran immediately straight through the pot and out the bottom. It was barely absorbing at all. I pushed my finger into the top layer and it felt dense, compacted, almost like I was pressing into hard clay. Here is a truth that a lot of plant owners don't realize. Potting mix is not permanent. Over time, usually within 1 to 2 years, all that wonderful organic matter breaks down. The mix compacts, loses its structure, and completely stops holding those vital air pockets. Eventually, the soil essentially repels water. The water just finds the easiest path, usually channeling right through the cracks down the sides of the pot, rather than absorbing evenly into the root zone. And that compacted texture? It suffocates the roots just as badly as a pot with no drainage hole. The fix here is to give it a fresh bed. Refresh the soil every 1 to 2 years. You don't necessarily need a bigger pot. Sometimes the plant just needs a fresh, breathable mix in its current home. When you pull the plant out, gently loosen the root ball to remove all that old, exhausted soil. Then replant it in a light, chunky mix. For most tropical plants, a fantastic rule of thumb is a ratio of roughly 80% good indoor soil to 20% perlite. You know, those little white volcanic glass particles. This keeps the structure open, drastically improves drainage, and actually lets the roots breathe.
That brings us to culprit number 4, the schedule trap. Okay, so with drainage, light, and soil finally sorted, my plant was genuinely bouncing back. We had healthy color, steady growth, it was great. But then I went on holiday for 2 weeks. I left very specific instructions for a friend to water my plant every 5 days, which was the exact schedule I had been following. Well, I came back to overwatered, yellowing leaves. My friend had executed my plan flawlessly. The problem was, my plan was completely wrong. So the crucial point is this. Plants do not consume water on a fixed schedule. The rate at which your soil dries is constantly changing. It's based on temperature, humidity, pot size, how much the plant is actively growing, and even the season. A watering schedule that is absolutely perfect for a hot, sunny summer will leave your plant practically drowning in the winter when its growth naturally slows down. Watering every Friday, just because it's Friday, regardless of what's happening in the pot, completely starves the roots of those essential dry periods they need to breathe. We need to throw the calendar away completely. Seriously, start watering in response to the soil. Before you water, just push your finger about 2 inches deep into the soil. If it feels moist at all, stop. Wait a few days. If it feels completely dry, then you water it thoroughly until it drains out the bottom. And look, if you have tricky plants that don't give you obvious visual cues, like a monstera, which rarely droops even when it's totally parched, just get a cheap soil moisture meter. It removes all the anxiety and guesswork instantly.
And finally, culprit number 5, running out of room.
Now for our final mystery. About a year went by, and my plant was an absolute showstopper. But then, it happened again. The lowest leaves started turning yellow, one by one, slowly creeping upward. The plant just looked hungry, no matter how much fertilizer I gave it. I lifted it out of the pot to investigate, and there it was. The roots had completely filled the container. They were wrapped in this tight, dense spiral, pressing hard against the plastic and literally choking each other out. The plant had just run out of room. When a pot is completely filled with roots like that, they can't take up nutrients efficiently anymore. Plus, this massive block of dense roots dries out incredibly fast, meaning you are constantly watering just to keep up. But why the yellow leaves? Well, plants are incredibly smart. When nutrients are restricted, the plant prioritizes survival above all else. It pulls nutrients out of the older, lower leaves to feed the newest growth at the very top. It sacrifices the old to protect the new. When you see this happening, it is time to upgrade their living space. Repot your plant into a container that is just one size larger. We're talking about 2 to 4 centimeters wider in diameter. Please, do not put it in a massive pot. Too much extra soil without roots to drink the water will just lead you right back to root rot. Try to do your repotting in the spring when the plant is entering its active growing season. And this is really important, hold off on fertilizing for 4 to 6 weeks afterward. Fresh soil already has nutrients in it, and the roots really need time to settle in without being burned by a concentrated feed.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the ultimate preventative habit, catching problems early.
We've talked about the 5 specific fixes.
drainage, light, soil, watering, and pot size. But honestly, none of these fixes work unless we make a fundamental shift in our mindset about how we interact with our leafy friends. The people whose homes look like lush indoor jungles aren't using magic. They just catch the signals early. We need to slow down. Don't just dump water in the pot and walk away. Look at the leaves, both the top and the underside. Lift the pot. A super light pot means the soil is dry. A heavy pot means there is still moisture in there. Check the bottom drainage holes to see if roots are trying to escape.
And the best part? This isn't some massive time commitment. This life-saving observation habit takes maybe 10 minutes a week total. Most plant problems give you weeks of subtle warning signs. A single yellowing leaf, slightly softer stems, maybe just slower growth, long before they become fatal. If you dedicate just 10 minutes a week to acting like a botanical detective, you'll catch the culprits before the damage is even done.
So I want to leave you with this question to ask yourself today. Think about your space. Think about that one plant sitting in the corner that might be looking just a little bit sad right now. Which plant are you going to check on right now using these 5 clues? Go lift the pot, check the soil, look at the light situation. Become the detective your plant needs you to be. Because the next time a leaf drops, you won't just see a dying plant, you'll see a puzzle that you know exactly how to solve. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy growing!